So, right, let's get here into the little into the box. Not up yet. One hasn't connected to the other. It's funny how that works. Technology. So it's our guest, just letting us know that he'll be here in about 10 minutes.
Beautiful.
Which is good. Let's just see how it goes slow. Turn that down. Cut that across there. A little reboot. Did this the other week too. There we are. Look at that. Oh, should do that. Don't go thinking. Privacy. There's on the go slow. It's better. Yes. Bed. Do. All right. Rightio, Mr. Irvine. I think we're just about ready to rock and roll. Good, sir.
Well,
in fact, I would say that I'm 100% convinced that we are ready to rock and roll. Let's do it.
Okay, welcome everyone to Dean and Nerve Spin Doctors. Episode what?
I don't know. I haven't rejigged the whole world yet.
Series 2, episode something.
Something 11. 11 series 2, whatever. But tonight we've got a special guest, so I might even start adding a little bit more in the headlines to kind of help people.
So that they can find
decipher and find specifically.
Like to find.
Yeah.
Anyway, my name's Anthony Irvine. I'm a councillor on Temora Shire Council. All of the views I express here are mine and mine alone, and not those of Temora Shire Council. And
maybe somewhat the views of Temora Shire Council on occasion.
No.
Very rarely. No. Well, and I'm Dean McRae, and I guess I started this little shit show with a bit of a hosting gig down at a radio station that I don't know if it still exists or not. It may possibly have been wiped off the face of the planet in the face off, but all my opinions are my own. I'm yet to be bought and sold by anybody. I say exactly what I think when I think it, and try to be as transparent as humanly possible. We do have a guest tonight.
Yeah, good.
Now, I mentioned it in the Facebook advertising introduction. Now, the guest, ladies and gentlemen, is a fellow by the name of Andrew Thaler. If you Google him, you could spend some time. Don't believe everything you read. Don't believe the hype. And some of it is quite possibly true. But Andrew is certainly, I guess, from the outlaw councillor persuasion. Andrew is also not a bad bloke from all my experiences with him.
Andrew has also been democratically elected.
Andrew was democratically elected by the people of snowy Monero.
Yes.
I've met Andrew quite a few times. Andrew came to my campaign launch for the federal election back a few years ago. Was it 20, whatever it was, here in the Riverina. So Andrew came down for that. There's a bit of a supporter. And a few years before that, when I was living in the Eden Monero, I actually got involved in that election, and I went and actually visited Andrew at Nimitabel.
Yeah.
And it was the same year that Barnaby Joyce was on TV crying and very upset about droughts, farm rages. And there's this great little video with Barnaby going, "I just want government to get out of our lives." And he was a deputy prime minister at the time. It's like, listen, you dopey hypocrite. You've got the power to start pushing for a bit of that. Never did a damn thing. But business as usual. Barnaby's, a lot of talk, a lot of bluster, and doesn't do very much. So Andrew's going to be joining us shortly, which will be great.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I really want to get the other side, because obviously there's a huge hate campaign on Andrew with like the 2GB and
had a big blow up with Ben Fordham. He and Ben aren't friends anymore.
He's had a long running animosity with Ray Hadley,
Yep.
his
Right.
predecessor.
Yes. Andrew Thaler has been a thorn in the side of quite a few people for many years.
Yeah.
And that's look, he's an out there kind of guy.
But
I'm not going to pretend that he's not an out
also-
there kind of guy.
but also
in many ways, he puts you and I in the very conservative.
But he got voted in.
Got voted in because he's a very, very serious guy. He has an awful lot of facts and figures, a bit like yourself. Does his homework before he picks a fight. I think he's up to about 80 complaints or whatever from other councillors about hurt feelings and bullshit. I'm not sure about.
He's seriously got like he
walks into a room and they'll file a code of conduct on him. Like this.
This is an indication of just how seriously the council that Andrew Thaler represents didn't want him there. The CEO resigned because Thaler was there, because he got elected.
Yeah.
The CEO resigned about a week after he got there. Now I want to ask him some questions about that, but that's just.
Oh, and I'm sure he'll answer them.
And they've still got an interim CEO. They haven't filled the position permanently.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like I say, it's just.
Oh, and he's a very.
I want his views on the Office of Local Government. I want his views on the investigations. These code of conduct absolute farces that I consider just BS.
He's totally an outlaw guy in the sense of he will sit there, he will do his homework. A bit like you finding the Gipper Act and using it to your advantage. He's of the opinion that they should take the Gipper Act and shove it up their ass. I'm an elected councillor. I'll get what I want when I want, and you're not keeping it from me. And he is a serial pest, as the paper.
But that's okay. You can say that, but if they won't give it to you, what else can you do?
Well, we're going to find out when he comes on the program. Let me tell you.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, and I think it's
look, it's going to be a lot of fun to have him on, ladies and gentlemen. I have sort of tentatively asked him to somewhat monitor his language. I would never censor anybody, but there is always the ability to, Andrew can go on a bit of a tirade. So I'll put the PSA on the front of this one. He's probably a little less self-regulating at times. But look, overall, all my experiences with the guy, are positive. I've never had a negative experience with the guy, but I know he's a bit out there.
Okay,
and some of this stuff.
If anyone's offended.
Offense is given, not taken. I'm not going to be. I'm not apologising. I'm just letting everybody
know. Everyone who's watching this is watching of their own free will. It's their choice. This isn't on primetime TV. This isn't beaming into the lounge rooms without someone's actual ability.
They have to actually go search us up and lock on in. Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you don't like it, tune out.
If you're watching this is by choice.
Your own free will. You are a grown and consenting adult, I suspect.
Absolutely. So be warned that there may be some fruity language.
That's not always a possibility with you and I. I just know with Andrew sometimes.
No, but I've done it myself.
Oh, I've done it. I live there. For sure. But anyway, there's your pre-warning with Andrew. But I'll tell you what you will get. He shoots pretty straight. He's not afraid of anybody at all. He's as I said, he's gone up head to head with some of the best. From Hadley to all the way, and that's not even before you see his political battles.
That's right. And that's in a platform where they hold all the cards, because you can be making perfect sense and they'll just cut you off.
Well, and that's what happened last time he was on Ben Fordham. Ben called him a fuckwit.
Yes.
I think you're a fuckwit, and then hung up on him.
Oh, nice one, Ben.
Look, they were arguing over whatever they were arguing over, some topic or whatever, and Andrew got involved some way, shape or form, and how with that copper that tasered the nana.
Yes.
That really dangerous nana that happened to be.
Yeah, there were some allegations that he was misrepresenting and claiming that he was representing the family.
Well, there was something that went on. I don't know exactly.
That was the.
We'll ask him about it. He'll answer. He'll tell us. And that's it. If he knows me well enough, I'll ask. I'm not afraid to ask him any hard questions that I'd ask anybody that comes on the program. You got to be willing to shoot straight.
Well, let's listen to both sides. It's amazing how many times only one side of the story gets told, and I always prefer. And look, he's portrayed as a ratbag in the mainstream media.
Well, and you know what? To a degree, he is. But here's the part that people, or these people in power, need to start understanding is there's a massive portion of the Australian population that are ratbags, and like being ratbags, and like living their life without being pompous assholes. And they don't like corruption, and they get tired of being bullied around by these wankers. And it just so happens that somebody like Andrew's pushing back a little bit and challenging the narrative. And, from my perspective, if he goes in there and keeps weeding out all these shady deals and all the misspending and misappropriation of things, and has the balls to say it out loud.
And
Fair play to
the
him.
absolute spin that these councils are putting on things.
Oh,
And
look,
we're going to talk about that a little bit later too.
if their mouths are moving, there's a pretty good chance they're lying.
Oh, and the way that they second the mainstream media to do their propaganda.
Of course.
And the narrative isn't the true narrative. It's never the truth. It's not even remotely approaching it.
More often than not, you're correct.
Yeah, so anyway, look forward to it.
Right,
so how far off is he?
Oh, he reckons he's about 10, 15 minutes off. Let's get started. When he gets in here, we'll just bring him in. No worries.
Okay, well,
we can freelance, we can spin the wheels, we can do whatever we like.
Okay, let's just back up. I wasn't here last week, as everyone will know, and Councillor Richard Foley from Wagga Wagga City Council joined Dean, and I had a look at the interview or the program there during the week, and Mr. Foley was very team player and very team Wagga and very team Wagga City Council.
Yeah.
They've been through some rough times. And he didn't want to really enter into any of the conversations around the inadequacies of Wagga City Council because they're many.
Oh, I no doubt there are many.
And you just look at things like they're talking about this great need now to duplicate the Gobba Bridge.
Yes, yeah.
That's after they've built about, I'm only guessing here, 2,000 homes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
On the north side of the river.
Yes.
In a new estate.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think the duplication of the Gobba Bridge would be in the conversation before you
built a whole new area? You'd probably think so.
It's like build it and they will come. Build it and the bridges will come. So that to me is short-sighted stupidity on behalf of a local government authority to allow massive growth and development to the north of the town that's divided by a river without enough adequate river crossings. And they've got gridlock. They've got a peak hour now.
Yeah, absolutely they have. I usually miss because I'm over there too early in the morning, but I'll tell you what, on the few occasions I've been caught there, it pisses me off.
It's terrible, and it's only going to get worse. And if they think that the federal government or the state government is going to bail them out and build another
multi-million-dollar bridge.
And I'm talking multi-million-dollar bridge. That project, the original Gobba Bridge project, and look, let's be factual. I'll find the...
Yeah. That's what we kind of do, is you put those sort of notes up, so that's always good.
I would love to know what the original Gobba Bridge cost.
Okay, well, Dr. Google will help us out with that for sure.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
For sure, that's what Dr. Google does.
The Gobba Bridge
English
cost over $49 million to build,
which is equivalent to nearly 100 million
in 2022. Now, I don't know when the state government sits there, and they prioritise things, and we know that 87% of Australia's population live within 50k of the coast.
Yes.
And we are that rare 13% that live in the hinterland, spread very thinly.
Not thinly enough some days, I can tell you.
But
not thinly enough.
Can you imagine what the federal government or the state government's attitude towards Waggas? And I'm telling you, 100 million in 2022 probably equals 200 million in 2025.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because that's a pre-COVID price.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, we've had the COVID inflation.
There has been a massive inflation through COVID.
But
it's all right. Many lives are saved.
No, but seriously, I'd be very. It's just the stupidity of this whole process where we've got a federal government, a state government, and a local government. The local government decides to go and do all of this land development, open up all this land on the other side of the river, and then they decide they need another bridge, but they're not going to pay for it. So they want someone else to pay for it. And those other people will go, well, why did you build all those houses over there? No, seriously.
I'm hearing you.
This is the stupid.
And they are really nice areas. The Goldbridge River, beautiful.
Yeah. It's questions I'd like to ask Richard, and we'll get him back on.
Yeah, we'll get him back on. I'm sure he'd be happy to come on
that's
anytime.
what I'd like to ask him. And Wagga, to mine, has been a really lazy council over the last 20 or 30 years. When you consider how the growth down on the border, say, with Albury-Wodonga.
Right.
It's been steaming ahead, and they've got a lot of industry down there, and a really a booming economy down there. Wagga has always sort of rested on its laurels somewhat because they've got the RAF base, they've got the army base, and they've got the university.
Yeah.
And then they act as the rural hub for all of the surrounding, like from Lockhart, right around to Narandra, right around to West Wyong.
There's a big circumference there.
Right around to Young, in this big catchment that all feed back into Wagga for their health, their livestock sales, like the major livestock selling centres at Bowman, the big abattoir, Cargill Teas is at Bowman. But they're not new businesses. They've been there for 100 years.
Yep.
You know, the Abbeys have been at Wagga at that location for as long as I've been a kid, like as long as I've been alive.
Well, as long as you've been a kid.
Yeah, but since I was a
kid. Yeah, since you're a kid, of course.
I'm looking at what's the next big growth driver for Wagga.
They don't have one.
Well, they do. They've got massive government money.
There's potential, but they don't seem to have a direction, that makes me go, oh, okay, cool, Wagga's going to do the following this, and this.
They just seem to be just this lazy, fat, useless operation that really doesn't do anything. Like,
I feel that way about all government entities being fat, lazy, useless.
But Wagga as a centre,
as a driver,
it's not kicking goals. And they're even relying on the fact that they've been designated activation. There's this activation precinct or something where they've special activation zone. There's one at Wagga, there's one at Parks.
Right.
So they're putting this intermodal freight hub there at Bowman. They're putting the big solar farm at Bowman. They're trying to get some drive going there, but it's all government money going into these things. And how much drive will it generate?
Yeah, none.
And look, this is
certainly the grand scheme, bugger all.
It's not derogatory towards the actual business people of Wagga and the residents of Wagga. It's just more derogatory to the direction. Like, when you look at Albury-Wodonga, they really maximise their benefits from the Hume Weir and the river and things like that. You go down to a place like Echuca, and they really do embrace the Murray River, the port, and the whole place really leverages off that, and the tourism off that. They've got paddle steamers, they've got all these other things that leverage that association with the river. Whereas Wagga seems to turn its back on the river, builds a levee bank, and says, "Oh, that dirty river, we don't want to know about you."
They've got a beach.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, the place used to go off. There was a water slide down at the beach. They used to have bands down the beach. There was gummy races down the beach. There was people used to use the beach. People used to swim at the beach. It was highly utilised.
Yeah, right.
But
now it's a park that people go, oh look, Wagga has a novelty beach.
Wagga City Council in the last 5 years or 10 years have actually started to realise the great benefit and to start to develop it down there. So they've built on the old and I'll show you the old oval that used to be at St Michael's High School. Now they've built an outdoor stage. They've built massive playground areas down at the beach and a really good, high quality, state of the art kids playground. And they've done up a lot of the so this is the complex down here. Look at this. This is their big adventure playground down at the beach at Wagga. This is where the old caravan park used to be. And if you come back to this location, here's their outdoor stage. So this is their outdoor stage, which projects into that. That's the old St. Michael's Regional High School oval.
Right. Okay.
So that stage
projects out into that space.
Projects out into that space. They've got all these walking tracks. It's an excellent spot down there.
Yeah. Right.
And then like that looks a bit dry and droughty, but last time I was down there, it was green grass.
Lush,
and
yeah,
it
right.
looked fantastic. So
yeah, right.
Finally, I think someone
has decided
that they could leverage that and use that natural resource.
Yeah.
And create something meaningful down there. So that's a positive move forward. But you know, there's all these things. Wagga City Council don't even own the airport. So it's a regional centre, and they're at the mercy
state government.
Yeah, of someone who owns that airport, and they could say yes or no, or we're going to put your rent up 5 times, or so. There's the stupidity of that. There's a big thing there with their FOGO or their FOMO, or that ridiculous idea that you need 17 different bins to put your rubbish in.
Oh, right.
It all ends up in the same spot.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That's causing a heap of confusion. Their roads are a disgrace, and Foley spoke about that and how far behind they are with that sort of thing. But the buck stops with the council.
Oh, of course.
Foley had great run-ins with Paul Funnell.
Yep,
Paul Funnell was there. You'll recall when Alan Eldridge was the CEO or general manager there was all sorts of things. They were in court.
Yep.
With
well, I know Paul pretty well. Paul's a good guy.
Well, they were in court with
Yeah, speaking of good guys, Andrew's just logging in now, so I can see him there in the background. We'll get him in the room any second.
There were all sorts of Wagga City Council won an unfair dismissal case brought by former General Manager Alan Eldridge. Now, this is from March 2021.
Yeah.
So it's only 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, here we are. We've got Rod Kendall sitting up here, and this is Mr. Eldridge. This is from the ABC News. So this is all very,
very biased. Unbiased. Of course. We shouldn't defund the ABC.
So,
except for all of it.
Now, the former general manager of Wagga City Council has been ordered to pay council's court costs after his attempt to sue his former employer for unfair dismissal failed. Now, he sued the council for more than $1 million after he was dismissed without notice in 2017, 17 months into his 4-year contract. And it would have been lucrative.
Oh, well, no doubt. They're all lucrative.
The council claimed the sacking was justified because Mr. Eldridge had engaged in serious breaches of his employment contract, including failures to declare and manage conflicts of interest.
Yeah, right.
Now, apparently, the council, Mr. Eldridge claimed that he didn't know about his son's involvement with the proposed residential development.
Sure. I know bullshit when I smell it.
Anyway, so that's what background that Richard Foley's coming from here, and he's saying everything's going along swimmingly at Wagga City Council. Well, I'm telling you, mate,
there's probably a few holes in that.
There's skeletons, and the skeletons are buried everywhere.
Bodies.
There's bodies and skeletons, and there's stories and shenanigans.
As there is in all these councils. And look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get stuck in right now, ladies and gentlemen. A friend of mine, I think Councillor Irvine, you may have met him briefly.
Yeah, I can't recall, but I met a lot of people that night.
Yeah, there was a lot of dubious outlaws at that particular event.
It got a big. There was a lot of notoriety.
There was a lot of notoriety. Made the front page of the Wagga Bugle.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the indomitable Andrew Thaler. Andrew, how are you tonight, buddy?
G'day, shoppers.
G'day, Andrew. Good to meet you.
And you? You don't want to talk about. Sorry, you don't want to talk about council or something, do you?
Councils? Never heard of them. Do they exist?
Oh, they're not lawful.
It's lawful. We're going to touch on all that in a little minute. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned at the start of the program Andrew Thaler was going to be joining us. Some of you may have Googled the guy. Some of you may be horrified that we would be willing to talk to him after Googling him and either liking or disliking. Some of you may have Googled and got really excited and went, oh, like this seems very interesting. I have no doubt there will be plenty of people who are going to have certain reactions to this conversation. But from all my experience, as I said at the start of the program, I've always found Andrew to be a straight shooter. I've always found him to be a bloody good bloke. And the fact that he calls out the corruption and the dubious nature of all these goings-ons, I find that refreshing, and I'm a bit of an Andrew Thaler supporter in that context, mate. So how have you been? Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for inviting me on your show. It's I've got a scoop I can give you tonight too. I've only just walked in the door, and my wife says, "Oh, did you know the election's been called?" I haven't had a chance to check the news this afternoon, so apparently the election's been called. Am I right?
Well, you're wonderful. Me, it must have been called after 7 o'clock because I've been in here since 7. I haven't.
There you go.
Haven't looked.
Anyway, so two scoops.
We'll Google that up pretty quick. So yeah, that is big news if that's the case. If it's been called the 3rd of May.
No, they're just saying expected.
Oh, expected. Oh, okay, right. Well, only one scoop then. That's fine. Look, thanks for having me. It's good to always chat. Dean and I met years ago when you ran for the federal election of Eden Monero.
That's correct.
And
yeah.
You were sort of doing a bit of a road trip around the electorate.
I'll butt back in. No, there's a bit of late mail here. SBS is saying that Albanese has announced it for the 3rd of May.
Yep. There you go. That's what my wife told me. So I won't ever deny what she says, mate.
No, don't do that.
So yeah, Dean and I, we met. That was actually the year Ricardo Bosey ran in the electorate as well.
Yes, Ricardo ran as well. Yep.
It was an interesting field, and I didn't run that year because I was basically threatened by the Electoral Commission. We weren't friends. I'd run in Eden Monero 2013, and I'd run in every election pretty much since, and that was the first one I missed because we had a really weird situation, and I'd actually stood out of that one because I got threatened by the Electoral Commission. But no, it was good. I had a quick little chat with you in the main street of town, and then I bumped into you at different places, and we, with Richard Foley, a mutual friend, and coming over with his campaigns when he ran at different stages. It's funny the little networks that we've all got. As to your introduction,
absolutely, and look, when the good councillor Anthony Irvine here said to me this morning, he goes, "Have you seen all this stuff with this Andrew Thaler?" I said, "I'll bring him. We'll get him on. I'm sure if he's not out doing some sort of formal, upsetting of officials, I'm sure he'll make time to come on and have a bit of a chat with us." So we are grateful for you, coming on board. It's good fun.
And I just want to make one observation, if I might. Mainstream media have painted you as a rat bag, and they really give you a hard time. But being a duly elected councillor in your council, clearly you've got the support of a solid base in your community.
Well, that is correct. And what's interesting is that the support base is far bigger than anyone or any of my enemies want to admit. So when the likes of Nicole Overall get up in Parliament with parliamentary privilege and just shit talk me and lie and name me in the Parliament, when you got the likes of Bronnie Thaler and what have you organising front page stories in the Sydney Morning Herald, which then gets picked up by the Brisbane Times and the Age and Western Australia, you must be pressing some really, really big buttons. That's the way I see it, because that's a lot of capital.
When you start to look at the Stowe Monero, it is dominated by that Thaler name, isn't it?
They want you to think that it is, and they like to sort of pass themselves off as royalty. That they are the descendants of Sir William Hudson, and he did the Harbour Bridge, he did the Snowy scheme, so they passed themselves up as royalty. And let's be honest, they're rich. They do own a lot of land across that family sort of group. But,
Yes.
Angus is well known for his $80 million of imaginary water that he sold to Barnaby Joyce, and that the money was spirited off to the Cayman Islands. And Angus, if you notice, have a look at any photograph or video interview of Peter Dutton, and who's hiding in the background? The silent assassin, Angus Taylor. He plans to be the next Prime Minister, so don't be surprised if it's a Dutton wins and then he gets tapped on the shoulder and deposed, and Angus Taylor suddenly appears in your news every night.
He's got every indication, and every move he makes, you can see that he's just in waiting. We all know that. Stevie Wonder can see that. Anybody who can't see that's not paying attention.
And for anyone who's not aware, that Bronnie Taylor's married to his brother, and she was a state politician in New South Wales.
Yeah, so Bronnie was in the parliament for about 9 years. She ended up becoming the Minister for Regional Health, the Minister for Mental Health, and the Minister for Women. And the only portfolio she actually put any effort into was being the Minister for Women. She used to cruise around to high schools and rally up a lot of the girls in the year 11 and year 12. She was throwing money at getting women into government. So all of those women in government programs, you can thank Bronnie for a lot of that. That was all she was really interested in. But
Bronnie appointed our mayor here, Rick Furman, who's a staunch National Party advocate, and she appointed him to a panel, an advisory panel for regional health. And
I thought you better say for women, and I'm going to say I don't think he's ever spoken to one, has he?
No, for regional health, and I really don't know on what basis, because the mayor's got no background in health. I mean, he's a middle-aged or late middle-aged
overweight guy, like
single male who has got no qualifications in that space, and I don't know what he can bring to the table.
I don't know. Didn't Joe Biden's Minister of Health wasn't he a transgendered fellow that it was overweight transgendered fellow was the Minister for Health? So I mean,
the people in the advisory panel, I went through the people who were appointed, and some of them were well and truly qualified to be on that panel, in my opinion. This is my opinion.
Yeah, of course. All of our opinions there.
Well and truly qualified. But I looked at Councillor Rick Furman's appointment. I thought, well, what on earth can that individual bring to this panel?
Nothing.
So,
like I say, why they do that for loyalty. So it's the same as parliamentarians get elected, and backbenchers are quite often, sitting in the backbenchers twiddling their thumbs. They get appointed to committees, or they become a committee chair. There's another 30 grand. So it's about keeping loyalty to the party. And I think you'll find that those things, it's like padding out your CV. I need to be a member of a board. I need to be a non-executive director on an advisory. So it makes your boring resume look a little less boring.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And this the mayor we've got, I'm telling you what, his CV's bulging at the seams. He's got more chairmanships and Anyway,
it's a wild show. Just before we top on here, Councillor Richard Foley, he's just addressed your concerns there, Ed.
Yep.
So, Irv, in relation to my comments, I was referring to the working machinations between my colleagues being much less combative. I never refer to the issues with the bureaucracy in Wagga Wagga City Council, just to correct the issue there for the people watching. And as always, I sort of share these things and leave them up for a little while. Even when people call me nasty names, I put them up and leave them there. So thank you for that, Richard. That's always appreciated. Thanks, Richard, from Matthew, and top blokes from Dan. Dan's a great guy. Yes. How you going, guys? Thank you for tuning in. Righto, let's keep rocking the boat with Andrew here.
Just to put some.
Do you want a scoop? Well, do you want a background, and then I'll give you the scoop?
Yeah, do the background, then the scoop, so people know who we're talking to.
I just want to sort of paint a picture. I know that immediately after being elected, the CEO at Snowy Monero quit because you'd been elected. The council is still operating with an interim CEO. They were at one point talking about banning you from council meetings.
Yep.
Like, what sort of a circus what sort of a democratic process? Who are these bureaucrats that think that this is even remotely doable? Because I think your response was, I'm going to go into council, I'm going to take up my place, as is my right.
Well, so I'll go back. I'll go back in time. I'll give you the super condensed version. The very first day my wife and I came to the Monero, I had a gun pointed at me. So that was my welcome. And it's been an interesting time. So we moved our business down to Cooma. We bought a scrapyard in the industrial area of Cooma. We moved down. We had a big contract. We quickly had 10 people working for us, 2 semi-trailers, and we were travelling New South Wales. We were flat out. We got stiffed in a contract, and National Party was in the background. And we sort of thought, well, we could fight it, but we decided we'd start a family. So we actually had our first kid, and we have now 4 properties around the Monero: a scrapyard, our house, another scrapyard, and a farmyard, a farm. And because we had a bit of a tough gig, a tough start with the council told us lies about the property that we purchased. I ended up battling the council, and I won over a couple of years. They tried to shut me down, and I won. They then took me to court. We ended up in the Land and Environment Court, and in that matter, I lost because the council didn't provide the documents that I subpoenaed. They said that they didn't have them. Some years later, accidentally, I found those documents in council's files. So I was pretty motivated for a long time to try to right the wrongs of a really dodgy council that doesn't know what the truth is.
That sounds terrible.
It's the most common story that we hear. Yes. One thing I say to a lot of people, we're a nation founded on convicts. Who were the first criminals to set foot in Australia? And a lot of people go, oh, the convicts. Well, actually, no, the guards set foot. They were the bloody criminals, first and foremost. So, born of convicts, treated like convicts, really. So I ran for various council elections, and I didn't really care whether I got in. That wasn't ever the driving issue. It was accountability and awareness. I would go to meetings. I would help people. I'd meet people in the crowd, and they were trying to address the council that had some problem. One notable example was this old fellow, and council wouldn't let him build his house. They wanted him to pay $45,000 to extend the sewer line to reach the property through a whole bunch of empty properties, and he didn't have the money. And that's not actually how the law works. I helped him reformulate his argument, and after sort of 6 months, council agreed and said, yeah, we'll only charge you your pro rata amount. We'll put the sewer main in, and other properties will pay when they get connected. He then built his house. Unfortunately, he spent 5 years living in a caravan in Nimidabel. We have pretty cold, snowy winters, and he didn't handle that isolation and the stress very well. So obviously I met him at the end of that, and 2 years later, he'd moved into his house, built his house. He committed suicide, and I was the last person on the planet to ever talk to him. I didn't know what was happening, but he came to my work. He would come in for a cup of tea. He'd come here to my house, and he'd just sit and watch our kids while we have a cup of tea and a chat. But he bought me his bottle collection that he'd dug up from his property when he built his house. And he'd given me his vacuum cleaner, and he'd given me all these things. He said, I don't need them anymore. I didn't really understand what was happening. He was giving away everything, and then he gave away his life. And I went to the council, and I ripped him, and I said, you motherfuckers are responsible for that bloke's death. And I then said, right, I'm going to get elected, and I'm going to tear this thing apart and try to fix up the corruption. I know it's not easy, but that really motivated me, and that really pissed me off. And that left a mark on my life. I kept going, and I started getting a bit more traction, I suppose, with federal and state elections. People were aware of my message. I bought a solar farm with my wife, and everybody wanted to know me. Like, you bought a solar farm? Tell me how that works. We did an Australian first with connecting a solar farm from a remote, like the country area of Singleton. It's not terribly remote, but it's far enough away. And we connected it to the University of Technology in Sydney. We connected it virtually. It was the first in Australia. Everyone said you couldn't do it. I said, be buggered, we'll do it. So we did. And then a lot of solar farms and wind farms used our model. I didn't monetize it. I made it freely available. And so that pissed a couple of people off, because then people had a way to connect their solar farm to markets in the cities, and I didn't make it a secret. I shared it with everybody. So I suppose I upset a few people, and I made a lot of friends.
Upset a lot of people.
Yeah. But I kept going, and I explained it, and I used to do conferences, and I did, speaking and all this kind of shit. And then I started to get a bit better. I got double the votes between Peter Hendy and Mike Kelly. They were 770 votes between them, and I got about 1,500. And so my votes basically swung that election. And then I got arrested in false charges by the police. The police started buzzing me, breathalyzing me, doing everything to try and make my life even worse. So I fought that, and then I just come on the wrong side of the cops. We just hated each other, and so I ended up on a series of false arrests, chucked in the cells, charged, go to court. One of those charges took 4.5 years to go through the court. It was listed for a jury trial in Queanbeyan District Court, and then COVID hit, and we could never get to the jury. Eventually, after spending about $40,000 eventually with lawyers, because I used to always represent myself, but the courts didn't like that. So I got lawyers, and I did a plea deal because I was up for another 40,000, and they just said, do a plea deal and we'll just piss this off out of the court. So we did. I got arrested again with this fat prick in a wheelchair. He ran into me in the street, and then he lied about it. I got arrested in front of everybody, and that got put around the media. We went to court, played the video. Yep, you didn't do it. You're innocent. And then last year, bringing up to date, I was put all over 2GB, Sydney Morning Herald, everywhere. Man arrested for choking a woman. Now, it's contentious, and it was really annoying. So she assaulted me, and it's all on camera, and I had witnesses. The police didn't give a shit, didn't watch the video, grabbed me, chucked me in the cells, and charged me with a whole bunch of charges. So I was in the cells for 8.5 hours at Cooma Police Station. Ray Hadley had my charges. He had a copy of my charges before I was charged. That's how dodgy this shit is down here. And I'm sitting in the cells, and they gave me bail, and I had to sign the bail forms, and I signed them via Coctus. And the plod walked off, and he processed the forms. And there's a phone call to the charge room, and it's a sergeant in Queanbeyan saying, Mr. Thaler, you can't sign your forms via Coctus. I said, well, why not? And he said, well, you just can't. Now, for the shoppers at home, via Coctus is Latin for under duress, and it basically vitiates any contract. It means you've signed a contract under duress, and it has no legal force or effect. And none of the other cops knew.
Purely, I'm signing this because you're making me sign it.
Absolutely. And then the sergeant said, if you sign it via Coctus, we're not giving you bail. I said, but that's the very definition of via Coctus, mate. He says, but you're not under duress. I said, dude, I'm in a cell away from my kids. Only way out of that is to sign this piece of paper. So, of course, that's duress. Eventually, he accepted it via Coctus, and when they handed me the copies as I walked out the cells, out the police station, someone had put a line through it. Anyway, I couldn't get in touch with my wife. You only get your one call, and I said, oh, well. So I walked home. I live 38 k's away from the Cooma Police Station, so I walked home. And Ray Hadley, Ben Fordham, started talking about me at 4:30. Man arrested for choking a woman. And I was very angry with all of that. But what became humorous afterwards, when I read the charges, it actually said, deliberately choke without consent. And I had to check with my lawyers. So you can actually choke someone if you have their consent. It's perfectly fine. But if you don't have your consent, it's a criminal charge with 2 years jail.
There was something to do with Michael Hutchins about that, but that's another story.
That's self-inflicted. Well, yeah. So 110 days later, I got smashed in the media. I got pilloried. I got picked on. I got death threats. I got people driving past my house yelling out abuse. 110 days later, we go to court, and the police withdrew all the charges, and the magistrate ordered they pay my $10,000 legal bill for my legal representatives. That's also quite unusual to get 100% of your legal cost. Now, That's the super condensed version. Here's the scoop. That woman's name was Sandra Drayton from Bertie's Cafe in Nimitabel. Sandra was charged today with 2 counts of common assault upon me 9 months after the event.
Yeah,
That's
right.
how bad that arrest was. The police have now charged her. Yeah. So that happened today.
Have you made a complaint that they have to act on, or have they done that of their own volition?
I made a complaint to the inspector of the Professional Standards Command in Queanbeyan.
Yes.
And I made about 3 more reminders saying how long does it take to investigate this. Clearly, if police withdrew all charges, it's pretty clear to see why and what happened. And so I think they withdrew the charges in July. So we're looking at 9 months. And so Sandra was charged today. Now, in the middle of that, this is where it gets even funnier. Sandra was selling counterfeit or contraband cigarettes. And I got evidence of that, because one of the things is that you need to talk about the credibility of a witness. And so I would say that if the charges were going to run, that the police had a witness with 0 credibility, therefore her allegations couldn't be relied on by the court. And so the police paid her a visit with the Department of Health, and they found that she was selling illegal cigarettes. So that's what's been going on. Now, the reason why that's important, so this is a woman who has assaulted me, 2 counts of assault, and selling illegal cigarettes. Bronnie Thaler, Nicole Overall, our former mayor, and all of our female councillors all went to court with Sandra. Big bloody hugs. We're here to stand for women and the good women of Nimitabel. That's what the National Party choose to stand with.
And lies and manipulation and bullshit. Nothing.
And an absolute, just a complete blanket smear campaign, supported by mainstream media and some of the biggest media agencies in the nation. Like I say, you're referred to as a rat bag. I'm sure if we search Wikipedia for rat bag, a picture of you would come up. But then when you hear these stories, it gives it a much more credence. And obviously you're a victim of a campaign run by a community of very powerful people who just want to run you out of town.
That is exactly the fact. And in my defence, I say the things that need to be said, and I quite often say the things in a way that makes people listen. So you need to get your message out there through a media that pretend you don't exist. And at the moment, they can no longer pretend I don't exist. And it's not great.
This program in its own, it just due to the fact that Dean was running a consistent weekly show on a community radio station as a volunteer presenter. And because we were talking about matters that concerned some of the important few, Dean was ordered that I couldn't come on the show and Dean couldn't talk about community matters. You know what I mean? Like, so here we are now on an international or a global platform talking about these matters. So it really hasn't helped those individuals one bit. And in fact, it's actually blown up in their face gala. And I think this whole climate of exposing the mainstream media and exposing the bullshit that these people peddle and how they try and destroy just common people. And they've got absolute, like you say, that individual, that poor fella that they impeded in the building of his house and really made it they had a massive impact on his mental health and they had no problems doing it.
Yeah, like, that's correct.
This is across the nation in all of these areas. These things are happening.
They're bullies. They're bullies and they're out of control and they're using their power and no one's calling them to account. And anyone who does actually go up against them gets absolutely poleaxed. And they really pull all of the machine against them. But I'm telling you, every week that goes on and every time we do a show like this, it's another blow against that bullshit and it breaks them down and it really exposes them for what they are and the scumbags and the bullies and the absolute out of control bureaucrats that they are who aren't answering to these codes of conduct and these bullshit statements where they say that, oh, we're doing the best for the community and we support local businesses, and oh, they're just a nasty individual who's disgruntled, and all that absolute crap.
Yeah. So to give a bit of balance to this, people will be looking at it and saying, oh, he must be a bad bastard. He got arrested that many times and this kind of thing. So I was the first person in Australia to do a virtual net metering connection. There's a technical description for it, but it was incredibly simple. And we connected a solar farm to a university skyscraper in the city. I was the first person in the world to mine Bitcoin in a solar farm. So I was approached by Channel 9 and Channel 7 to film a 1-hour documentary about Bitcoin mining with a solar farm, and everybody was nuts for Bitcoin in 2017. I've been mucking around with it since 2013, and I was still late to the party. So with that, they wanted to get a big anchor for their story, and I said, well, there's no one bigger than John McAfee. He was a Bitcoin miner. He was just a legend, right? The antivirus guy. And they said, oh, we'd love to get John McAfee, but we can't get in touch with him. He's not answering. And I said, I'll do your deal. If I can get John McAfee to interview, I'm coming with you. And they said, oh, no worries. So 2 days later, I rung back the producer and said, John McAfee can interview you next Wednesday. All I did was tweeted him for about 3 days and said, hey, I'm a solar farm Bitcoin miner in Australia. I'd love to chat. We're filming a little show. I'd love to be able to interview and include you in the story. And he sent me his mobile number. And then he just said, come over. I'm free next Wednesday. I'm very busy, but we hopped on a plane. I took my son with me, my oldest kid. And we went over and hung out with John McAfee for a day.
A lot of freeze there, Andrew. Oh.
Sorry. I went to Germany on a lark to go to a Bitcoin mining conference, and I met up with a wealthy Australian, Oliver Curtis. Surprisingly, he spent a year in Cooma jail for insider trading. I met up with him and we started a business together. Right? We started a business together. He's just done 100 million capital raise in Singapore with that business. I got bought out because we had a difference of opinion with COVID. We couldn't travel during COVID and prolong the business, but we actually started a data center in Tasmania, built the business, and it was my design, his capital, my design. I brought a couple of mates in to help me, a mechanical engineer and a software engineer and a comms guy. Now, I'm not just a shitbag. I'm not just a rogue. I'm very smart. I work hard. I've always been self-employed since I was 20 when I started an apprentice electrical fitter, tradesman. I've always had a go. I've had some wins, had some losses. I've made friends, I've lost friends. It's a pretty standard thing. But what I despair for the most is in the country of Australia, which used to be the have a go, fair go country, it's now the fair game country. And people with ideas are run out of town. People that think a bit differently and dare to challenge the system are crushed. And we need innovators. And what we have is bureaucrats. We are burying ourselves in bureaucrats who bring nothing to the table except regulation, red tape, and pain. And I stand against that.
And pay rises for themselves.
And I haven't got a pay rise.
More of their friends. And a bloat of the system. I think that 1 in 10 in New South Wales employees are employed by the public service.
No, it's worse than that. It's actually worse than that. Very interesting statistic going back to 2022 in Eden Monero. Eden Monero has about 43% of people directly dependent upon the government for their day-to-day living. So that means public servants, federal, state, local government, government NGO, government-funded corporation-y, not-for-profit, dole, welfare, pension, and NDIS. You put the NDIS on top, because that's come on top. I think we're over 50% of all voters in Eden Monero, and I think this probably replicates fairly heavily, are directly dependent upon government for their day-to-day existence, and they're not going to bite the hand that feeds. So they quite easily choose red or blue. They just choose the less shit of red or blue at any point in time, and that's what we've been seeing in our electoral cycles.
Definitely a race to the bottom, no doubt about that.
Oh, it's a choice of arsenic or strychnine, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, Andrew, how many codes of conduct have you managed to get since you've formal codes of conduct have you received since you've been in council?
To date, I would imagine it's over 80, if not 100 by now. I give them plenty of opportunity to get upset. The story is in October and early November, there were 19 codes of conduct lodged against me. And they started lodging them with the council through the council process with the governance officer or the CEO. 4 of them, the very first 4, they did provide me a couple of lines out of the complaint, and I know they are complete bullshit. There's no specificity, there's no detail, and they've not actually pointed to the code of conduct breach to support the complaint. Of the 19, 1 has been formally withdrawn. I've got screenshots of that conversation. No one admits that, but 1's been withdrawn. So of the 19, there's only 18. Since then, we found out a month ago that there were some 50 codes of conduct in January and February. Haven't got through most of March. I reckon probably most of those are against me. I'm not shy in calling the councillors out for their bullshit. We had a bit of a set to today, this morning. We had a bit of a run-in yesterday. I'm happy to say that I've broken the code of conduct system in New South Wales, and I am proud of that because it's a control structure. If you look at it, it's not a law. It's not in the Local Government Act. The Local Government Act refers to a code of conduct policy. Policy is not law. It's a guide. And what the lefties particularly have done, and Ron Honig has admitted this in his conversations when he sought to review the code of conduct and the code of meeting practice policies, was he wanted to remove the weaponization of codes of conduct. So you can't say that I'm going to do a code of conduct and you're going to get in trouble. Well, fuck that. I left school when I was 18, and I mean, that's a long time ago. Says, oh, you're going to be in trouble for saying that. No, hold me to account, prove me wrong, challenge me or debate me. Don't say that you're going to run to the headmaster and bloody have a cry or a sook. And that's what we have, and that's what we see. And I stood up against it with a very strong, firm opinion and pushback. Now, what's interesting is the minister published details of the codes of conduct, that 19. I've never seen them. They haven't put the allegation to me. That's a denial of natural justice and a denial of the principles of law, to know your accuser and know what you're accused of. So the minister has broken the law.
But even in my
wouldn't read it.
They have to give you a notice of investigation, and they have to tell you what you're being investigated for.
Correct. They haven't done it.
Now, Temora Shire Council have spent over $70,000 of ratepayers' money on codes of conduct against me, and we're in the midst of more codes of conduct as we speak. So that figure could well be in excess of $100,000 by now. That's being diverted from meaningful projects to bully me, to shut me up, and to stop me talking about things that they don't want said.
Well, this is how simple it is, and you can join me in this. I don't think the Snowy Monaro Council are doing a very good job. Full stop. That's my statement. That entitles somebody to make a code of conduct complaint against me because they allege that I'm bringing council into disrepute. Am I bringing council into disrepute, or is the council doing such a shit job that I make that statement? Who's wrong first? Me for making a statement, or the council for doing a shit job? That's really what this whole...
And Ron Honig has basically just set the record straight when he says, in the Australian Constitution, there is an inherent right to freedom of political expression.
Yep.
Now, your opinion that you've just expressed there is clearly your political expression, and you're entitled to the freedom of that. So how then, and I think Ron Honig's major point is that the code of conduct system isn't supported by any law. Therefore, they can't really impose any of it. And what he's basically done is he's called out the stupidity and the inadequacy of the whole process, and he wants it replaced. He wants it condensed down to about a 2-page document, which is just a statement that says, you know, we're going to try and do this. And realistically, he's going to confine it to what can and can't be proven in a court of law, and the rest of it goes away.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating actually, because there's a tension between, excuse me, I've been talking for weeks, million phone calls. We got so many dramas down here. My voice is worn out.
Years, mate.
Yeah, I know. So I do have a ginger beer.
No, fair enough.
I'm not going to breath test you, mate. You're a big boy. You do whatever you like.
Yeah. Oh, it's another funny story, don't we? I got a million funny stories. So I've got to share it though. We had a councillor 2 terms ago, and he was turning up to the meetings online from his pool room, and he'd sit there and he'd knock back a stubby, and he'd sit there eating peanuts like this and another stubby. So I put in a complaint and said, look, he's drinking alcohol. We have a 0 alcohol policy with our council. And they investigated and said, no, it was a ginger beer and it was sparkling water. And everyone's like, it's a VB. You can see it in the video. Anyway. So
the bullshit they come out with, it just hurts my head.
Oh, you laugh. So with the Ron Honig thing, sorry, I'll finish your point. In the Ron Honig thing, there's a tension between Ron Honig as the minister trying to administer all the local governments in New South Wales and the office of local government. And I think the office of local government are completely out of control. They've gone full rogue. They're bureaucrats. They're numpties.
I think they're disgusting. I think they're corrupt. I will go as far as to say, and I'm an elected councillor in New South Wales today, and I will say the Office of Local Government is corrupt.
And I will join you and say the Deputy Secretary of the Office of Local Government is a fuckwit. Because I've asked him simple, logical questions, and he argued with me. And for example, with a quick segue, we had a meeting with him about our performance improvement order, and we asked him, did you write it or did the minister write it? Because it doesn't look like the minister wrote it. The minister's a barrister, public bloody defender of some 20 years. So whoever wrote our performance improvement order is not a lawyer. It was grammatically wrong. Its structure was insane, and it didn't make actual sense. So this Brad fellow, he was a bit pissy. And one of the things says that councillors must not make, remarks and things that a reasonable person may find offensive. And I said to him, what definition of reasonable person are you using? Can you provide that to us, please? Are you using, for example, the Wikipedia has a range of reasonable people, or the man on the Clapham bus? Now, the man on the Clapham bus is a London case precedent where the reasonable person test was basically determined and set down. And what that is there's 2 people calling each other rude names on the street, and a bloke hops on the bus and he's going to Clapham, to the bus to Clapham, and he's sitting on the back of the bus and he looks out the window and goes, oh, I'm offended by that behaviour. Or he looks out the window and says, I'm not offended by that behaviour. So that then becomes the reasonable, objective, detached person who doesn't know who's involved in the scene, doesn't understand the context. What would they think observing a scene? That's the reasonable person test. And the classic case law is the man on the back of the Clapham bus. He didn't know what I was talking about, and he got the shits with me when I said Wikipedia. And he said, oh, are you mocking me with your Wikipedia reference? I said, no, but if people put what is a reasonable person into the internet, that's what you get. You get the Wikipedia entry. He lost his shit at us. I've got that recorded, by the way. And he didn't know how to deal with it. And that's the Deputy Secretary in charge of the Office of Local Government. That's the Muppet driving all of this bureaucracy and writing up all these reviews and all this kind of stuff. And he, I think, is also responsible for a lot of the content of the Code of Conduct review and the Code of Meeting Practice review. And they want to make Code of Conducts finable with a penalty notice, which brings us into the Evidence Act, and it brings us into the Fines Act, Fines Act 1993 or 1996, can't remember. And I would actually welcome that, because if someone's going to make an allegation, you're not going to get a fair hearing with your CEO or your bloody governance officer, or God forbid, the Office of Local Government. Take it to a local court, put it before a magistrate, and then you've got the power of subpoena, and you go and you subpoena these bastards in the council and say, give me your emails, give me your documents, and let me see what's actually been said behind the scenes.
Lines up with your evidence. That's the whole thing. The whole code of conduct thing, they can put these codes of conduct against you with zero evidence and have them stick.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well, one of the code of conduct. One of the code of conduct.
You don't get a chance to cross-examine. You don't get a chance to test their evidence. You
Correct.
don't get a chance to put forward any mitigating factors.
You get a little bit of a chance, but you're dealing with somebody that probably doesn't like you to start with. One of the code of conduct complaints against me, and of course I got a code of conduct complaint for revealing the detail of the code of conduct plate, and I said, well, get fucked. The minister printed it, so it's public knowledge. But the mayor wrote a complaint to the general manager and said, hi, David, I'd like to make the below email from Councillor Thaler a code of conduct. Cheers, Chris. That's it. That is the full extent of the complaint. No specificity.
So the general manager's then got an obligation to go off and try and fashion some sort of a code of conduct complaint out of this direction from the mayor.
Correct. And that, instead of sort of reviewing it and saying, oh, well, okay, what Andrew wrote was maybe uncomfortable for the mayor, but what Andrew wrote was entirely factual. So there is no grounds for a code of conduct. He actually, within about an hour from the email being sent as a complaint, a bullshit complaint, within an hour, it was forwarded to the external reviewer. And the external reviewer is getting paid $5 or $10 grand. And the external reviewer then started badgering me. And I just entered in an email war with her because I thought she's a complete idiot. She's a lawyer, but she's not very smart. And I figure, I'm going to waste your money, love. And so I just kept emailing back and entering into pointless arguments for fun. And eventually I kept saying, I apprehend that you have a bias. I then found out she's a former councillor from our council, which is obviously completely inappropriate. And she chucked it. Yeah, she chucked a shit and sent all of the code of conducts to the Office of Local Government for them to handle it. So now when people say, like Nicole Overall, MLC, says, oh, it cost our council, it's not even our council, so much money. It's cost us nothing because Office of Local Government are doing the code of conduct reviews. Cost us nothing. It's free. It costs taxpayers, but...
It's out of control, isn't it? The most bizarre setup where it's set up by some narcissistic imbecile who has come up with this most ridiculous concept where they can make these allegations and none of the evidence is tested, and they just basically drag your name through the mud publicly. And if you go back with a relevant claim that ticks all the boxes, they can just say, oh, no, we won't accept that as a code of conduct complaint. It's so subjective. There's no...
and it gets worse.
There's no integrity in the whole process.
No, it gets worse, and I'm curious to your experience. So I've read a lot of law, and I've represented myself in court a lot, and I'm not too bad at it. I'm not a lawyer, though. So when I go to the council, I read up the law, and so first things first, we were declared elected at 9:35 a.m. on the 1st of October. I rang up a mate and said, happy days, got elected. Can you come and swear me in? Because my mate's a JP. And if you look at Section 244 capital A of the Local Government Act, I think that's the one, 244, 233, one of them. It says that you can be sworn in by the General Manager, a JP, or an Australian lawyer. And so I went to the council on the 2nd of October, and I just put out a call on Facebook and said, hey, everyone want to come along, witness, I'm going to get sworn in tomorrow at 2 p.m. So we stood on the footpath outside the General Manager's office, the guy that chucked his shit and quit. And I was sworn in by a JP. The General Manager, David Hogan, locked the council, sent the staff home, closed all the blinds, put a security guard on the door, and called the fucking police.
Because you were swearing yourself in.
Because I was coming at 2 o'clock.
Having the JP swear yourself in. Yeah, swear you in.
Yes. And then what's interesting, so that's one contrast. You look at the other contrast, I got all these phone calls from people around the state going, holy shit, can you actually do that with the JP? I said, sure. And there was a bloke in Spain. He was elected to the Central Coast Council, and he was in Spain on a COVID adjourned holiday. And they said, you take the holiday now or you lose your 10,000 euros fee. So he got He got through the election. He went to Spain. He got elected, and he wanted to run for mayor of Central Coast Council. And he watched my video and then realised that if he could find a JP, so he went to the Australian Embassy in Spain, found a JP, got sworn in as a councillor in Spain, and then got approved to appear by AVL to participate in the mayoral election.
Unreal. How'd he go?
I don't think he made the cut, but he was able to become a councillor.
That's that's all.
So, butterfly flaps its wings and shit changes around the world, right? It's true.
Absolutely funny how it works. Now, Richard Foley's just said, Andrew, can you tell us about the fine defender and the shit show regarding revenue in New South Wales? We're gonna squeeze you for as much tonight as we can, buddy.
Yeah,
Andrew's saving council money. Yes, well, they waste enough, brother.
I saved another 50 grand this week. We had a sale yards committee meeting, and they wanted to put. Honestly, I could give you multiple shows, and everyone's going to shake their head and go, "The council can't be that bad," but they are. They wanted to put CCTV cameras up in the sale yards in Cooma, so that they could charge rent for the trucks that park there between sales or over the weekend. So there's always stock trucks. We don't have very many B-double general access roads because most of our roads are dirt and shit. So you've got to split your trailer and do single trailer deliveries. So we'll have store cattle sales and weaners and whatever you. Then the trucks will deliver the cattle, park the trailers over in the back of this big parking area, and might go home overnight or for a day. You'll have the store cattle sale, you have the weaner sale, and everyone's got to then take the cows to wherever they go. So you go and grab your trailer and you load them up. Our council wants to charge rent to park a trailer at the back of the sale yards. And my argument is, if they're not going to park there then, they're just going to park around town. So our council wanted to spend money on CCTVs to try and police the parking at the sale yards. And so we put it through resolution in the sale yards committee. No, we're not doing that. So you can have an effect. That's why it's worth doing. I commend more people to run for council. All right.
You can't just, you've got to, even there was an ex-councillor from another council who said to me in the street one day, he said, I might not agree with you, but he said, you've taken the first step. You've got off your ass and you've backed up your bullshit and you've gotten elected. You know what I mean? So you can sit there in the pub, bleating and moaning and carrying on and having your big soapbox sessions, but if you're not going to get off your ass and actually do something about it, well, you're not worth a stand.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. And so what really upset the lovies down here in the National Party is I didn't just run by myself. I motivated a whole bunch of other people. So I'm not in council on my own. I've got a team, as it were. So we're 5 and we've got 6 that we're against. So it's 5 versus 6. We just need to roll one of those 6 every now and again. So we hit them with eminently logical arguments. We're really well resourced and community-backed arguments. We run out of chairs in the gallery every single meeting.
Unreal.
Because so many people come. And we have thousands of people tune in. I mean, we're an interesting council because we've been in Sydney Morning Herald. It's so contentious. We've got all these headlines. We've got thousands of people watching our meeting. It used to be as exciting as watching paint dry, but now it's become a sport. What's Andrew going to say? What are they going to do? And so it's about community engagement. And so we've flicked the switch on that. Same with Richard Foley in Wagga and mate of mine, David Porter down in Bega. I'll tell you another one that I really like is Troy Stiles up in Upper Hunter. He's become a mate of mine. He's a whistleblower with the gambling. He exposed all clubs in New South Wales with the gambling.
Yeah, right.
He got elected in Upper Hunter, and he's one of us. He's standing up for the community. You know, he brought an issue to the council that they needed to deal with the water in Merriwar because it was pretty bad. And we've got bad water in Yass. We've got high manganese and it's smelly. We've got poor water quality across Bega in various areas. Our shire is pretty bad. They've got radioactive water in Merriwar. And the council voted him down and said, basically, fuck off, we don't care, we don't drink it, we don't care.
Yeah, right.
That's how bad things can be. He just wanted to get started with trying to work out what are our options. Can we connect a pipe to the neighbouring shire and actually get clean water out through Sandy Hollow out of Denman or something? Right? These are all towns.
Yes.
No, wasn't interested. They don't like Troy, so they voted it down. So basically, the people of Merriwa have to keep drinking their radioactive water. That's shit.
Yeah,
Where's Ron Honig on that?
You're lucky. You're 5v6. I'm usually 8v1, and I'm the one.
Yeah.
But
so what happens with the 8v1 is you end up like another friend of mine called Big Rob. He actually changed his name by Deagpole. He's a classic. He got a bit pissy with me because I've got more code of conducts than he has. He's in Lismore Council. Lismore Council.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
he's won versus the others. They won't even second his motion. So he puts up a motion, no one will second it, and it dies on the bloody floor of the chamber.
That sounds I've had that happen plenty of times. I put a notice of motion up and they just won't even second it. They just let it sail through. They put it up 3 times, it dies, regardless of how much merit it's got, regardless of how important it is to the community. They're just that bloody minded and so set. They
petty.
Yeah, and it's pretty disgusting, really. But look, how just one thing about the Cooma area at the moment is the Snowy Hydro. Like, what are the main drivers around the community there at the moment, and how is the area going, and what's the vibe?
Oh, we've got such diverse communities. I live in a little village called Nimitabel, and I want to tell everybody that it's the shittest place on earth because I don't want anyone to come here because I don't have any neighbours at one of my properties, and we love it. It's a tiny little place, but
I've been there.
You'll get assaulted in the cafe. You'll get served a pie you can't eat. Right? It's a gorgeous place though. We have 4 seasons. We have snow a couple of times in the winter. My kids can just walk to my work. We homeschool. We look out for each other, but we are split with a political divide between those who are National Party on bended knee and those who think for themselves. Cooma is quite tough place. It's got a bit of an ice epidemic, quite a bit of cocaine. Jindabyne's got a terribly transient summer and winter spike where all these party people come down from Newcastle, Sydney, Brisbane, etc. It's besieged by cocaine at those times, and then outside of those times, it's quite quiet and reserved. But it's gorgeous. You know, you've actually got seagulls at Lake Jindabyne. It's the weirdest thing to sit there and just let your kids play on the skate park or go for a walk, and then all of a sudden there's seagulls, and you're like, I'm at the ocean, or am I 100 kilometres inland? It's quite weird.
No, I go for a fish up at Tanganga. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a beautiful part of the world up there, and and I've sat there and I've looked at the snowy hydro development up there, and all of the pipeline segments are getting built at Cooma and trucked up the road, and there's crane companies from Cooma, and there's all this. There's a massive economic driver coming out of that from the snowy thing.
No. Let me tell you a brutal reality. The crane company in Cooma do not work for Future Gen. The concrete companies in Cooma do not supply Future Gen. Some of the transport companies wouldn't piss on Future Gen. They don't pay their bills. They run everybody out to 120 days.
Oh, you can't.
Religiously.
Yes.
There's a company that supplied certain parts to the Future Gen site, and there was nobody there when they made the delivery. There was no one there to sign the paperwork for the delivery docket. So, they said, well, we've just delivered they're fucking big things. No one's going to bloody not see them. Yes. They went back and they put the invoice in, 90 days, 120 days. Hey, where's our payment? Oh, you didn't get your delivery docket signed. We're not paying for it.
Oh, you're joking.
No, I'm not. So they said, fine. You want anything from us? Cash only. And they came in and they put an order in. They'd broken a pipe thing and they were desperate, and they just said, "Don't care, cash only." So the Italian engineer rocked up with a big chunk of cash and said, "Give us those parts. Here's the cash." Right, they do not have many companies locally engaged or supplying them. We don't have that many workers locally working up the hill. They have a very, very poor reputation, and it hasn't really been a supporting industry or a supporting business. Roads have been smashed because of the tonnage of transport. Local cost for raw products went up because they bought everything. They bought all the sand. They bought all the rock. You couldn't get earth moving companies to come and do shit for you because they just took everybody. Your council can't keep people because you can go from, say, $34 an hour as a plant operator working for Snowy Monero Council. You can go and sit on your ass half the day and get $50 an hour up at Snowy Hydro.
Yeah.
So they are drawing our good people away. They treat them like shit, and they eventually get the shits and go, yeah, fuck this, but I don't want to go back to the old money of the council, so they end up going FIFO into WA or Western New South Wales or Queensland.
Yeah.
So they have caused a lot of drama. Now, let's not forget the tunnel machine's been bloody bogged, and man and mate, we're the ones that exposed the sinkhole. I got the secret information, and funny, I just rang up a mate of mine. You probably don't like him too much. I like him. Simon Holmes Accord, the guy that's sort of back in the teals.
Right up the teals,
yeah, I rang him up. He's an energy commentator. He's a really smart, really, really nice bloke. He and I don't agree politically, but we engineering and whatever. I said, mate, you want to come and have a look at this bloody hole? So he did. He drove to Cooma, and we went bushwalking for 3 hours through the back way, and we went and had a look at the hole. And on the way back out of the national park, he rang up Chris Bowen and said, Chris, there's a hole above your tunnel boring machine, mate. And that's how we got the story to break properly, because no one else would cover it, but we were able to get someone to pick up the phone and tell the environment energy minister, whatever he is. That's the power of my connections, because I know so many people. I'm bragging a little bit, but I was pretty proud with breaking that story with my mate Peter Anderson. And then he got on the ABC on Four Corners. I think they come and did a thing and told the story of it. And then, of course, they had to admit that it was stuck. It was stuck for a year. They got it going again, and they got it stuck again. They have basically turned a $2 billion project into a $20 billion project, and it's supposed to be built by 2027. I don't think we'll see it running before 2034. Most of the products are all made overseas. The only thing made locally is those bloody curvy segments that you see on the trucks. Everything else is imported.
Yep. I heard a rumour, and I don't know how much credence this has got, that Turnbull had an interest in the tunnel boring machines. Have you heard anything along those lines?
I don't believe he does, because they are part of WeBuild and the Future Generation joint venture. So FGJV is Snowy Hydro and WeBuild, and WeBuild was Clough and someone else, and one of them went broke. And of course, anyone that gets in business with Italians that sort of come out of the Nringetta and those areas, you're asking for trouble. Turnbull has an interest in building tunnels up in the Hunter Valley between Glenbourne Dam and somewhere up there. He's doing something up in the Hunter Valley for a pump hydro. I think that's where the stories might cross over, but I don't think he would have had an investment. There is, quite weirdly, let's go back. Do you remember in the previous, what was it, Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison government, where we had the offshore detention and we had the Paladin company, which was traced back to a shack on Kangaroo Island. So they had like $1.3 billion worth of contracts for offshore detention. And it was just this shitty shack on Kangaroo Island. That company turned up in Cooma right as the Snowy Hydro was announced.
Yeah, right.
Weird.
Yeah. Incidental, yes.
But it's the same. It's like the Bondi group that Joe Hockey's a part of, and the way that when they're in power, they build these relationships and they put these contracts in place so that when they're outside the political sphere, they're basically cashing in and they're providing their services, and they're the consultants, and they're the facilitators of a lot of these things, and they basically just milk that cow forever.
Well, here's the thing. Look, Turnbull's smart. I mean, he was Packer's lawyer. You don't become someone like that if you're not smart. So he's smart and he's cluey, and he got himself into a couple of interesting startups, and he made a lot of money. But people that make a lot of money like making money. So he's announced the Snowy Hydro at $2 billion. And straight away, I mean, I've been in energy for a very long time. I used to work in a solar panel manufacturer in 1995. We started it up. I was part of that. Turnbull's announced it at $2 billion. There was no way. It was bullshit. Now, if he did get any investments in any of those service supply companies, and he clips the ticket like a ticket master, right? He just clips a little bit of the ticket. There's no good being a $2 billion project. Who gives a fuck if it blows out 10 times, it becomes a $20 billion project? They've got no incentive to keep the budget on track. If it blows out to 20 billion, he clipped the ticket at day one, like you just said. They just ride that coattail. They don't care what it ends up costing. I actually believe that most of the politicians, both red and blue, do that. And the only politicians that don't do that, I think, would be the Greens Party, because they're too stupid to actually get themselves organised. But I think the Liberals and the Labors both love these crazy engineering projects that blow up, be they harbour tunnels or the railway lines that Dan Andrew was doing, those level crossing replacements throughout Melbourne, right? They all blew out to buggery. They don't care.
Dan had a great hotel business going at one stage.
Yes.
Early COVID, Dan and his friends, they ran a pretty profitable accommodation business there for a period of time.
They chucked Katie Holmes into one of them, remember? And she opened the door naked and frightened everybody, and they packed her off home to England. Do you remember that?
Katie Hopkins, you mean?
Katie Hopkins, sorry, yeah. Katie Holmes was
Katie Hopkins,
Tom's wife, yeah. Oh, have you watched her? She's awesome.
She's great, Katie Hopkins. Katie Hopkins is great. Katie Holmes isn't a bad sort. So win-win depending on how you look at it. There's one controversial thing, Andrew, you've been involved in, and I know the minute I mentioned you, somebody brought it up. So the Claire Nowland thing. Now, I mentioned it on the radio show before I was banned from the radio show. Actually, no, I wasn't banned. I told them to bash it up their ass. It was a bit of a combination of. You can imagine how I reacted when I was told, Andrew, I wasn't allowed to interview this guy and I wasn't allowed to talk about local issues, and they were all very stunned when I printed all their, shared all their, $2 letters and told them to bash it up their ass. I'll do what I like. But when I was still on there was around the time that all happened, and I went pretty hard verbally on any copper that feels the need to taser an old lady ever. I'm hard pressed to see any circumstance where anybody over the age of about 70 is going to overwhelm too many people physically. It'd have to be pretty extraordinary circumstances. From the information I had at the time, little old lady with, what was it, a butter knife or something? I can't remember all that way back. Anyway, reasonably, you would have to assume big, strong copper, shot himself and tasered a nana to death. That was, I guess, the meat and potatoes of it. You ended up on Hadley, I believe, at the time, and Christ knows whatever else. And
that was the least of it. I was interviewed on Good Morning Britain, which is a morning audience of 16 million live. So I was interviewed by Brazilian newspapers. Yep.
Question one, how the hell were you involved in that? Two, why are they interviewing it? And three, why were you painted as some guy who pretended you were something you weren't in that mix? What went on? Just straight shoot. Again,
so point one,
you're allowed to put up the honest side of the story, or your side unedited with us.
No, I'll tell you the simple fact. I say the same thing all the time. I got a call from a friend of mine, Kylie Pask, and she's Claire's granddaughter. And she rang me in the morning. This is the morning after it happened. And she just said, Andrew, I don't know what to do. A lot of people ring me. I've got a good legal knowledge and whatever else, and they know I know how to deal with cops, etc. And she said, I don't know what to do. My nana got tasered, and they're telling everybody that it was just an incident, and it's bullshit. And I said, what? Tell me the story step by step. So she told me the story. And she had been to see her nana in the hospital. And I said, right, okay, tell me the story again, right through again, so I could look for gaps. She told me the same story right again. I said, you tell me what you would like me to do, because this needs to be made public. She said, I don't want it covered up. And so she gave me permission to reveal that information. I then rang a bunch of media people that I knew, and I said, you better get to Cooma. This is going to be the biggest story this year. And that's what it became, because it was so outrageous. Now, I met up with Kylie that night in Cooma, went to her house and we had a cups of tea.
Andrew?
Sorry?
This is Kylie who's commented in the made comment, just so that we're on the page.
That's exactly correct.
Hi Kylie, how are you? Welcome to the program.
And also Kylie's auntie, Gemma, which was Claire's youngest daughter. And Gemma said, don't let anyone cover this up. So I had the source information from Kylie and Gemma that night, and I told them that I wouldn't accept any money. I wouldn't do it for money. And I told all the media, you will all get exactly the same story. No favors, no bullshit. And we got offered 25 and 50,000 from 60 Minutes. We got offered 25,000 from Channel 7. They were hunting her. Part of the reason why I stepped in was Kylie also rang me and she's like, there's people in my front yard. I don't know who the fuck they are. What do I do? And that was the media starting to stalk around and try to find somebody. And I spoke to all the media and said, leave the family alone. I will give you all the information and any appearance you want, I do it. So I did that for a week, from 7 a.m. till that night at night. I fronted the cameras. I was available. I made myself freely available. I got one free coffee that whole time. And then Bronnie Thaler went on Ben Fordham's show. Sorry?
So you were bought those free coffees, mate. I'm telling you, that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
One free coffee. Bronnie Thaler went on Ben Fordham's show and said, Andrew Thaler is not the family spokesperson. And they put that label on me. I never said I was the family spokesperson. I said I was assisting family. I was assisting members of the family, but I was not speaking for the family. I never made that claim. Bronnie Thaler made that claim. She shit talked me, and Ben Fordham and then Ray Hadley unleashed a wave of hundreds and hundreds of death threats, constant deaths. Some of them were so bad I played them in Facebook Live saying, "The fuck are these people on?" I told the truth, and then I got death threats. I got people driving past my house. It was awful. But I did go on Good Morning Britain, whatever it's called. Massive audience. Everybody wanted to know the story because it was so outrageous. And we all said, this must never happen again. 2 months later, the bloody cops in South Australia tasered an old bloke in a nursing home over there. Yeah. So that's why did I do it? I knew Christian White. I found out pretty quickly who the cop was that did it. I was outraged that Cooma cops would be so stupid, and that our local council that ran the nursing home was so lacking in care and empathy that situation could occur. And that's simple fact. Claire should never have been in the council nursing home. Claire had advanced dementia, and the came out in the court case that the family didn't want her to be properly medically assessed. And my information is, if she had been properly assessed with dementia, she wouldn't have been allowed to be at Yalambee, because Yalambee was not a dementia accredited facility. She would have had to go somewhere else. That would have cost the family money to do that. So they were trying to save money. And our council was keeping dementia or people with dementia in Yalambee so they could make more money by charging a higher care package amount. So our council was trying to make money and causing misery and misfortune in the process, and I stood against that as strongly as I could.
Well done, mate. No, I got no issues there. It's, I think I've always had the theory, if you're going to be in the public eye and you're going to be in the public space, you should always have the answers to those tough questions and be willing to answer them. I've always answered any question people have been willing to throw at me, and I've always appreciated with you we can do that. But I also know I wouldn't want anybody to think that we were talking to Andrew Thaler and giving him a soft touch away from any of those tough conversations. It's just, I always say to anybody who comes on this little program, like, you're welcome to do whatever, but if you're not willing to actually have those, that's a horrible conversation to have from the perspective of this poor family lost their nana, grandmother, mother. The circumstances are horrible, and let's be fair, you got kind of hammered over it. So I just wanted to, give you that opportunity to do that, give the people the opportunity to see that side of the story. And earlier on in this chat program, Gina Southern said, great chat. Hope councillors see this. The way for that to happen, Gina, is for everybody who watches these programs, when it's on Facebook Live or on Twitter Live or YouTube, wherever you're watching it, you need to share it. That's how these councillors, I know the Temora councillors watch this with great fervour and enthusiasm every week. I'm sure they have a watch party every Thursday, sitting around biting their nails to what we're going to come out with. But for the good people who are in these audiences who sit there and say that, more people should see this, we hope the councillors see this. No, there's a limited window to what we can do with our own little networks. It takes you guys in the audience to share these things in your networks, post them, repost, all that sort of thing, all that stuff. I know all the YouTube kids say it, like, share, subscribe, but there's actually some merit in it. Feeds that algorithm, more people see it by nature. So if you want to help, absolutely do that, guys. It is very important. 15K spotlight. I'm just going to flick up a few of the comments here. I always try to give everybody the opportunity to do that.
So Dean, one of the things that you are correct, and this is the new media. So we've got a thing called Monero Zone down here with Chris Chan. He's fired up digital reporting, does interviews, great writer. He's been writing songs and using AI to create songs about council issues and councillors. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I've got an audience. I've had repeated cancellations on Facebook. They keep cancelling my pages, and I was blocked on Twitter for a while and all this sort of shit. One of the things that became a bit of a game in the last couple of years was people that lived on dirt roads that hadn't been graded would ask me to come and do a video of their dirt road. And within 2 weeks, council was out there grading it.
There is a lot of, I don't want to say power because you sound like a bit of a dickhead when you say it, but there is a lot of power in doing these types of things and the activism that, all three of us have been involved in various levels and combinations. And that's why it's valuable. More people can do these things, more people can have these impacts. And there are different, everyone's got different strengths on how they do it. I have no doubt that when they banned me from that little radio show that probably had 20 people listening in or watching every week, to us doing this now, we're on average, I think we sit somewhere between 300 and 700 a week would tune in. There's the odd one that's for some reason will spike to, a couple thousand, whatever the case may be. But I'm sure that happens when people get actively involved. Had they just shut up and let me keep waffling on the little Temora radio here, which, it was just content. I was asked to do something. I was happy enough to do that. It wouldn't have turned into this. Now, I suspect over the next few months going into the federal election, we're going to have more and more characters such as yourself, coming in regularly, things like that. And I think our viewership will increase gradually just by the nature of the guests we're going to have on. A bit like yourself, I have an interesting black book of people I can call and say, hey, come on the program. We're going to keep banging this drum from this end. Councillor Irvine here, who I don't know how closely you've been following his work. I think he's been doing an outstanding job here in the Temora Shire of holding them to account. But I've always sort of said that, I hope the people who follow my little Facebook ventures and digital ventures, that now they know who you are, will go over and follow the Andrew Thaler stuff. And they'll go and look at Councillor Foley and what he's up to. They'll go and look at John Ruddock, MLC, and the grenades he's throwing in Parliament. Proverbial grenades, YouTube, proverbial. And Andrew Thaler's followers will jump on Councillor Irvine's and give him a little bit of a boost. And it all just feeds that machine of opening up people's eyes as to some of this shit that goes on. That there are ways. There's challenges you've faced in council that there are other councillors who are in a similar spot may not have noticed. And they may follow Councillor Irvine and pick up something from you. Vice versa. Oh, I've used that weapon there. It works. That works that way. And we need to have a lot more of these sort of things. I think they're very important. And it's, from my perspective, if I can facilitate a little bit of that, that's kind of where I've found myself in a role these days. I think my candidacy days are pretty well over for the minute. I've got other things going on, but I really appreciate seeing councillors like yourselves get out there and absolutely stick it to these absolute bastards.
Yeah. So here's a bit of the sharing. So we ask for information as councillors. We are the governance, and we ask for information so that we're either representing an interest in the community, we're representing a ratepayer. I've got a bunch of motions. So we've got an extraordinary meeting next week to finish off a meeting that didn't get finished because we had a lot of items on the agenda. So I've got a motion about fluoride. I'm proposing we have a community conversation about fluoride. Do we continue to fluoride the water, or do we stop? And I did a lot of research about that. So I'm not saying I'm a fluoride cooker and let's stop all fluoride. Let's have a community conversation. I went to the legislation and I found the Fluoridation of Public Waters Act of 1958 and understood how it works and what's involved. It starts with a community conversation. And so that's the avenue that I'm taking. So people can't accuse me of being a cooker or crazy. I've also got another motion where I propose to end all COVID agendas and get rid of all the signage and all the bloody COVID shit that still seems to hang around all the council facilities. We're over, past it. I've got another motion where we should review the delegations of all the council staff. And that's a good one there. For Irv, you got to look at the council delegations. It's required by law to be done within the first 12 months of any new council. We're already nearly 7 months into our term, and our idiots haven't even contemplated it. And of course, that's important because when you look at a delegation, some delegations for lawful authorities, lawful powers, powers of entry, powers of prosecution, they must name the person the power is delegated to, and you can't delegate it from a role. So you can't say, oh, the deputy secretary delegates the power to Joe Bloggs, or the deputy secretary delegates the power of prosecution to the compliance officer. It should be Mary Smith, deputy secretary, delegates the power to Joe Bloggs, compliance officer. So we need to review power of delegations, and so should you, and so should Richard. We have to review the structure of the council within 12 months. That's required by law as well. We've been trying to do that. We ask for a corporate structure plan from the general manager down to the street sweepers. Show us the corporate structure. What is the delegation pathways? What are the authority and managerial pathways? How many street sweepers have we got? They didn't have one. And it's been a tortured debate for months. And then our argument was, how can we set a budget to fund all the jobs if we don't know how many jobs there are and what needs to be done? So these are the things where we share this information out with other people. Let's go back. We asked the council for information. I asked for, what are the levels of water fluoridation? What is the background level of fluoride in our river water, source waters? And can I have a copy of any of the certificates where the secretary of the department directs our council to fluoridate the various water supplies? Won't give it to me. Their argument is, oh, it's not a matter before council. We won't give it to you. You'll have to pass that in your motion. But that's a chicken and the egg. If you just gave me that information, then I don't have to necessarily make it that the motion is for the production of that information. They're mostly public records. They're mostly public documents, or they should be. So then you say, well, under section 335 in brackets little f of the Local Government Act, where it talks about the role or function of a general manager. General manager is to provide information to councillors so that they can fulfil their role or their duty. And we say, I'd like the information under 335 little f, please. Nah, not giving it to you. So we're getting close to taking our, we call him do nothing done, Shay. We're getting close to taking him to court to get a court order to make him provide us the information, which should be a public record.
I'll give you a little shortcut. Do a formal access application for that information under the Government Information Public Access Act. And the obligation is then on the agency to prove a public interest against the provision of that information.
So that should be, sorry, that's for people who are not in the council. The general manager works for us, remember. We are the council. the general manager is employed by us and works for us, and we say we would like that information, he has to give it to us. It's what the legislation says. So I hear what you're saying, but we, councillors, should not be forced to lodge a GIPA because that's public access. We're actually part of the council governance structure.
Yes, but that certainly, in my experience, unleashes all of that stuff. Even the confidential obligations within the code of conduct. If that code of conduct's been generated using public monies and it's a public document, a government document, then they can't make it confidential, and they have to provide an argument that it's against the public interest. And they've only got certain areas that they can actually argue that, and it won't comply with any of them. So therefore, the confidentiality obligations that they put on these codes of conduct processes are false. They're unsustainable, and they can't be enforced. So, like I say, I'm of exactly the same opinion as you, where we very much do get treated like mushrooms as councillors, and how dare you ask for information that might be like they tell me what's my role and what's not my role.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Right. So serious. There was a situation whereby there was the cost of a project that got undertaken that I never quoted for, and the job had been done and paid for, and the general manager was trying to argue that I had a pecuniary interest in the matter. You know what I mean? Like, it was absurd. And the only way that I could actually access that information was to put a formal access application in via the GIPA Act, and it cost me $30. And I'll quite happily take that out of my councillor fees to do so, to exercise my rights. But it demonstrates the bullying that these bureaucrats, because withholding what is lawfully your right to receive is an act of bullying. It's oppressive.
Correct.
And these people are out of control. And if they're doing that stuff on a regular basis, and they know, and I've demonstrated enough now that I have got no problems just spending the $30 and putting in the formal access application. And if they resist that further, I'll make an application to the Information Commissioner for a review, or I'll even take it further and I'll take it to NCAT. And if they turn up at NCAT and they look ridiculous with their withholding of this information, they don't want that embarrassment. So quite often they'll just give you the information. But the point is, and you've hit it from a different angle, simply is that it's oppressive and it's bullying to withhold information from councillors that is their right to have access to.
Yep. And it's a strategy. So what they're trying to do is to fake you out, delay you out, so that the time for the action has passed. Our fluoride thing, half of our water supplies are not fluorided. The one in Bombala, it broke years ago, and they couldn't be fucked fixing it. So they actually got a certificate from the Department of Secretary to say, yeah, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to fluoride it. So we've just spent $15 million building a new water treatment plant, which has a brand new fluoride thing in it, but they can't turn it on until it's inspected. And I would argue they can't turn it on until they get a new certificate directing the council to fluoride the water. So can I have that certificate, please? No. By the time I would get access to it via GIPA, we'll be months past. So this is a strategy by the staff to deprive councillors of information. I mean, you're probably in the middle of your IP&R shit at the moment, and I call it shit because it's stupid. So much of it is just a waste of time. We've got to go through that.
Yeah, there's no information. They withhold information, so they basically neuter your decision-making processes, and basically they just tell you how it's going to be.
Yeah, and they set you the budget. They give you the budget at the last opportunity and say, oh, councillors, you've got to put the budget on public display for 28 days, and you must do that tomorrow. And they come back and they've got about 3 days to detail the public conversation and the consultation. And then they usually have an extraordinary meeting. That's our council's experience. I'm only on it for 6 months, but about the 28th or the 29th of June, they have to have an extraordinary meeting to pass the budget. And they keep saying to councillors, oh, if you don't pass it, we can't work on July 1. Without a budget.
It's a bit like the one in the US. What do they have to extend the
the debt ceiling?
Yeah.
So Councillor here, we need to fully combine collective action and crowd-fund litigation where needed across the 3 LGAs if they refuse to abide by the law. I would go a little bit further on that, Richard, and I wouldn't be saying the 3 LGAs. I would be saying all LGAs as required. And I've been working on a modest plan in the background for that sort of thing. I need to put my finger out on a few things, but I do believe that there is actually a strategy that can create an entity that'll do that job with the right people in the right places. So,
but I believe
I agree.
Bureaucrats have hijacked this process. Bureaucrats are in control of this whole process.
Yeah.
I used to get emails from employees of Temora Shire Council that had the Temora Shire Council logo on it. Now it's got a state government logo on it.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So
okay.
I believe
no, we don't have that. Well, I can tell you, I was in Bombala at the show, and I spoke to a shitload of people, and a lot of them work for council, and that I'm totally cool with that. Tell me whatever you want to tell me, no problem. Yeah. And I won't betray your confidence as best I can. Sometimes I can't act on it because you're the only person that works in that area, so it's pretty obvious where I got the information. So we balanced that tension. So anyway, I got some information that the brand new water plant was quite dodgy as fuck. So I drove up there to have a look. And there's no fence, no security, no gates, nothing. And so I drove in and I saw there was a person in the little officey bit, and he waved and come out and we had a chat. And we had a very interesting conversation about all the ins and outs of the brand new water plant, how good it is, and how the old system used to work, and some of the problems that had been encountered with the construction and project management and lack of safety on the site, that the project hadn't been properly finished, etc. So then that's fine. Off we go. I get an email from the general manager on the Monday saying, Councillor Thaler, I've been made aware that you had an unauthorised interaction with our water plant operator on Saturday. You spoke about the fluoride levels. You asked about the background fluoride levels, and you asked if you could have a tour of the plant, but you were denied. Please explain to me in your response how this would not constitute a breach of the code of conduct. I rang the general manager because I thought this is weird, and I asked him. I said, "You don't actually have a complaint, do you?" He said, "No, I don't have a complaint." I said, "You're trying to manufacture one." I said, "What happens if I successfully defend myself against your allegations? Because I know I can." "Oh, well, I'll do a code of conduct against a staff member then." I said, "Right." So I gave him a very simple and nice response. And then he writes back to me and says, "Oh, I've decided not to take any further action." Our general manager, Stephen Dunshea, who I've said is a piece of shit, he was willing to put a code of conduct on a staff member and discipline that staff member even to the point where he might lose his job. My metaphor was he'd have strung him up to a light post and said, "If you talk to Andrew Thaler, that's what happens to you." That's pretty much a metaphor for what he was setting out to do. Now, that's not only bullying, that is criminal intimidation. And I stand against that as well.
I've been subjected to a code of conduct in the absence of a written complaint. It was brought against me by a general manager.
They are little gods. They think they are immune.
There was no complaint. This general manager fabricated the complaint.
Yeah.
And then the general manager managed to withhold important evidence and actually misrepresented the evidence that they had. And that was
I've had
upheld by the Office of Local Government. That is how corrupt this system is.
I've actually gone to war against our general manager at the moment. So yeah, David Hogan, the former general manager, he did quit because I got elected. He acted unlawfully against me to say that I was banned. I instructed my lawyers to write to him. He didn't handle that very well. We told him to go and get legal advice because if he had exceeded his lawful authority, he could or should or might be held personally liable. And so he quit, which I got blamed for that.
I can't imagine a rat jumping off a sinking ship. Surely not.
This is the difference.
What a dead shit.
The big difference there, Andrew, when you've hit it on the head, is when these individuals are actually made personally liable for their actions, whole field of contest changes, doesn't it? Because so often they act for this corporation and they are faceless, and they've got unending budgets for lawyers, and they get paid for every second they spend working on these undertakings, and they never suffer any penalty whatsoever, regardless of how heinous their actions may be.
Yeah, absolutely. That cost me $10,000, all of that legal stuff with my lawyer, and I had to book a barrister to be able to take an injunction in the Supreme Court. That'll cost me money. I'm going to make our council pay it back to me, because that's a cost that I incurred as a councillor. So yesterday, in one of our IP&R briefings, general manager we've got now, Stephen Dunshea, hashtag Do Nothing Dunshea.
So sorry, Andrew, I'll just go back for the punters who are listening. IP&R, tell them what it is.
Integrated planning and reporting.
The reason I do that's because there's people who are watching this who are going, what the fuck is that? And what does that mean? And what's it all about?
It's a big convoluted process that the bureaucrats love.
Oh, of course, no doubt about it.
And you know what?
Clarify those sort of things for those who aren't sure what's going on.
But Dean, it's not just the punters at home. I'm sitting there going, what the fuck is that? It is a load of shit. It is a load of shit. They tell us this is what we do, and this is how much it costs to do it, and it's going to cost more next year. And our first question was my first question. It was a funny one. I said, how much of this is legislative, and how much of this is just because it's what we do? And they actually went, oh, that's a really good question, Councillor Thaler. They'd never thought about it. How much of the shit that council does is required by law, and how much of it is just crept in and padded and built in, and they go, oh, well, we've always done it, so we have to do it. It's I reckon it's 50-50.
I reckon you're probably right. Matthew Nolte here asks, or states, I'm not sure I know Matthew, but thank you for your participation tonight, mate. Honig needs to be made aware of the absurd situation as OLG endorse this council behaviour. Ministers need to be asked questions in an estimate hearing. Just so you know, Councillor Irvine, from my understanding, has CC'd Ron Honig into multiple threads of conversation. He's very, very aware of what's going on. Whether or not he wants to put his head under the pillow or not, that's anybody's guess. Also, if I can get some questions in New South Wales Parliament, re some of these issues. Mate, if you've got some play in that area, I certainly don't oppose that. And if there's anything you need from my end to try and help you out, for sure. A lot of these things do require some collective working together.
Sorry, can you guys excuse me for a minute? I've just got to go and get a charger to charge. My laptop's going flat.
Yeah, mate. No worries at all. So, yeah, Matthew. Look, reach out again. Everybody who's in the stream watching, doesn't matter whether you're from my audience or Anthony's audience. Everybody needs to sort of start sharing these similarly like-minded people. You may not agree with them on everything, but it's certainly important to go, okay, well, I agree with this person on 80% of their political positions. Maybe we should be working together to stop this corruption.
This isn't even about political positions. This is about actually what's going on, the reality of what's going on.
Yeah.
So this conversation isn't about what we think's right or wrong. It's about what is the reality of how it's occurring.
Absolutely.
And that's the important part, because most people, and I was one of them, had no concept. I had a misguided belief that that there were more checks and balances and there was a much more rigour around the way these things were conducted. And I had no idea that it could be so corrupted and so misused, and just how improper the actions a lot of these things were. And the fact that there's no copper, like there's no agency out there that actually oversees this stuff. I've been told that I should direct, if I believe something's corrupt, I should report that to ICAC. Well, who pays ICAC? The state government.
ICAC is run out of the Premier's department.
Absolutely. So it's just a way to manage complaints. Well, they just manage complaints at ICAC, and they can, you talk to the ombudsman.
Circle jerking.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, I've got better things to do with my life than put together a 300-page report to submit to ICAC that they will tell me in about 17 months' time that they've looked into it and they don't see that there's a case to answer.
Yeah, look, we've got so many stories. At Matt Nolte before, thank you, Gina. Gina's great. Matt Nolte, he's got some good connections. He's actually taken questions about our council into the parliament through the Shooters Party, Mark Benasiak, and that was very, very effective. Now, one of the crazy stories in the previous term, not long after the Claire Nolan stuff came up, there was a motion brought forward to our council to borrow $50 million from T-Corp from Treasury, and they wanted to invest in roads and build a new headquarters in Cooma. And they said that the building is old and tired and it's not safe. And they had a structural engineers report suggesting that the building might fall down in a seismic event. And you think, that's pretty serious, right? So I read the report in the business paper, and we made representations to various people. And the council meeting, the morning of the council meeting, was a magnitude 3.4 earthquake in Berriedale, which is 30 k's from the building. You'd think, is that enough to be a risk if it's at risk of seismic, at failure from seismic collapse? The council chambers is in the bottom of the building. It's an old apartment, 3-level apartment with an underground car park, which was converted into the council chamber. So the council chamber is in the worst possible position in the building. There's an earthquake that morning, and we said, you should evacuate the building, get everybody out. They said, no, it's fine, it's fine. All right, so they didn't get that motion passed, but we put in a thing called a request for service from SafeWork New South Wales. And so SafeWork New South Wales attended the building and found that there was no fire sprinkler booster pump or firefighting hose reel things. Fire hose reels cabinets were rusted and falling off the wall. The switchboards were overloaded and the cables were hot. They found deadlocks on all of the fire doors and the fire escapes. And they found that the upper floor was structurally overloaded from too many people and too many filing cabinets full of bloody bullshit. That's the truth. When we got to the bottom of it, and you try to tell that story to people, and most of them are kind of shocked. And other people, they kind of look at you and go, yeah, and they don't get it. The councillors don't get it. They didn't evacuate the building, and WorkSafe didn't call them on it either. They were allowed to occupy the building, and it took a couple of months for them to replace the switchboards. That's quite often how dangerous local government can be when they hide behind all their bullshit. They are actually putting the staff at risk.
100%. And we were sitting in a meeting at one stage, and one councillor said, this was in relation to some road-related issues. A councillor said, do we have to wait for someone to get killed before they'll do something in reference to another agency within the state government? And quite clearly, the answer to that councillor is no. If you think that there's a danger, it's incumbent upon us to act within our powers immediately. You imbecile. Correct. You know what I mean? And this was just this was the stupidity of this individual. And you're sitting there going, look, and I'll tell you that I was directly impacted as an employer because one of my staff members' partner was involved in a really unfortunate motor accident. And it was after that motor accident that the council undertook some road works that they knew there was an issue with the intersection, but it took someone to be actually really, really adversely impacted before they did something about it. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Do they have to have an electrocution or they have to have a fire before they actually do what they should do? And that's the stupidity of it. And that is this whole idea that this councillor, and I'm telling you, this councillor is an experienced councillor, he's an ex-mayor, could make a statement of that stupidity.
There's an
That
acronym for it. There's two acronyms that cut to this. NMP, not my problem, and OPM, other people's money. They're the two problem acronyms that plague councils. Unless it impacts them personally, they don't give a shit. And when you want them to make a decision and you say, oh, we should save money or we shouldn't waste money on that, other people's money.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It really is terrible. Oh, yeah, Matthew wants to talk about the Cooma Water Reservoir. For your audience, Dean, indulge me for a minute. I'll tell you about the most insane story.
Oh, look, well, let's do it. Why not?
Right. So, 2019, that's the bushfires time. For 2019, we had a couple of fires just starting up. 19th of December, I'll set the scene. There's a council meeting just before Christmas. There's a resolution to spend about $920,000 doing repairs to a big concrete reservoir up on top of one of the hills in Cooma. 4.5 million litre drinking water reservoir, concrete, made in 1958, and it leaked. It had some problems. So they passed the resolution for the 920,000. And then we had the bushfires and they got a bit worse. 2nd of January 2020, the bushfires were raging in the national park, and up the army helicopter had set fire to the land just below Canberra. So we had bushfires to the north, bushfires to the south, bushfires to the east, massive bushfire to the west with the national park, right across to you guys. So the council thought, oh, fuck, we're a bit low on water. We should fill that spare tank up. It leaked. So they started filling it. And they filled it up to about 30% or so. And then the 3rd of January, they kept filling it. By about the evening of the 3rd of January, they got to about 80% full. And then across the 4th of January, they filled it by about midday. And it was full. There was a report made through to the council. They didn't answer their phone, went to police saying, your tank's leaking like a bastard. That was one of the reports. That's the quote I've been told. It's leaking like a bastard. And apparently the police visited, and supposedly the council visited, and they kind of went, yeah, fuck, get out of here. So it kept leaking. At 9:15 that evening, it exploded. And 4.5 million litres of water went rushing down a hill. I think it damaged 50 houses, washed away about 30 cars, picked the concrete driveway up out of the ground and floated it down the road. Massive, massive catastrophe. Now, the only reason nobody died, because that was the day, 4th of January, that the sky went black at 5 p.m. And I mean, can't see your hand in front of your face, black, with the whole of the national park blew up into a massive inferno. Everybody was tucked up tight in their houses. They had towels under their doors. All the windows were shut. Ordinarily, people would have been out walking the dog or sitting on the front veranda. Now, here's the rub. The reason that the council decided to spend $925,000 is the engineers had told them, if you use that tank, there are 14 reasons why it will fail catastrophically, and you must not use it until at least the 14 things are repaired and rectified, and there was actually 18 things that they were supposed to fix. So they were told not to use it. They used it. They were told not to use it because it would fail catastrophically. They used it. It failed catastrophically. 5 years later, we're in council saying there are still people that need compensation. Oh, yeah, well, we'll look at that. And there are people with asbestos under their houses or possibly still in their yards that was moved by the floodwaters.
Yep.
We'd like to do an asbestos assessment of the properties and then issue them a clearance certificate if their property is not affected. And if there is asbestos, remove it and then give them a clearance certificate. Our general manager said, no, I can't recommend you do that. That would be giving a private benefit to those properties. We can't do that with council money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sounds really backward in its logic.
Yeah, so Where's that up to? Why has this not been far more widespread?
I'll just put a bit of background into this, and I imagine Snowy Monero is in the same boat as many other councils in New South Wales, where they're members of the statewide mutual insurance organisation, which is a self-insuring organisation. So it's really in council's own interests not to claim on their insurance, and therefore the compensation and all of these other mitigating works are probably frowned upon in the statewide mutual environment.
Well, our information is that we were with statewide when this happened, and we got kicked out. So we went to Civic. We went to Civic Risk Mutual, who we're with now. But yeah, that's our information. That's my opinion.
Statewide basically was formed because local government authorities couldn't get insurance, and they basically formed their own self-insurance arm. Now, of course, when you're a self-insurer, the last thing you want to do is be paying out.
Yes.
So, they do, and this is only an observation, it's only an opinion, but it appears to me that it makes sense for them not to claim on their insurance. So basically they do everything in their power not to, compensate people or...
Well, it's ugly. So we were with statewide, and we had to go and find a new insurer not long after the incident. They reckon that was an ordinary thing, but it cost apparently an extra $1 million. The new policy was $1 million more. Apparently, we did claim upon the statewide policy because, of course, there's the public liability and then there's the professional indemnity. There's two parallel insurances within that framework, the 20 mil public and 10 million professional. We believe that our council has spent over $3.5 million of our own money secretly paying claims because statewide either wouldn't pay or refused to pay or voided the insurance because we filled a condemned asset. We filled a concrete water tank that the engineers said you can't fill it. So it's technically a condemned asset. So it would void your insurance. There's a questionable test at law as to whether the professional indemnity, because professional indemnity insurance, to translate into English, is fuck up insurance from the executives. So if they fuck something up and they claim to be an engineer or a doctor or you got professional indemnity, it's an insurance against fuck ups, misjudgments, errors of judgment, whatever, to be blunt. So that should have covered us some in that regard because it's pretty clear what happened. So what we believe is that we've actually paid a whole bunch of money out of our budget. Now, what we found out recently, and we get little pieces of information all the time, we've been using the water reserve budget, which is an externally restricted fund, to pay out claims on the water tank, and they've dribbled it out. And when people were putting in claims, they always dealt with one particular person in our council. They didn't deal with the insurer or the insurer's loss adjusters or the insurer's lawyers. They dealt with our council chief strategy officer, a bloke called David Rawlings. And his name features in everything, even to the point that one of the recent claims that we settled for a mate of mine, Michael Chotar, he waited 5 years to get settled. His car, he had an Audi Quattro, it was buggered from the flood. They hired him a car from Thrifty or something for 1.5 years. They probably spent $50,000 on hiring a car. His car was only worth $22,000. That's all he wanted, $22,000 to replace his car. They spent $50,000 hiring him a car for 1.5 years.
So then buy him another one.
They could have bought him two. And where's the accountability? So we asked for documents. No, you're not entitled to it. If we ask for it for a GIPper, they won't give it to us. This is what we're actually battling in the council. And I know there's a lot of, like Sherry's been a friend for a long time. A lot of people are really tuning in. I call it shit fuckery, PHUQUERY. There's no better term for it. Yesterday in our meeting with the IP&R thing, the general manager sat there and I got into an argument with him and he said, I can't allow council funds to be used in that way. I'm here to protect council's funds. I said, no, mate, you're here to help the people of the area. You're here to get rid of their rubbish, make sure the sewage doesn't flow into the neighbour's yard, make sure there's a swimming pool or a library. You're not here to protect the organisation's money. You're here to use the money cleverly, strategically, to make the life of the ordinary citizen or the ratepayer better. They don't have that as their core value.
No. Well, not if they're directors of a corporation, and you've got to then ask what the corporation's role is.
Yes. Well, there's rabbit holes in all of this. This is the common one that I come up against about.
There's some big rabbits there in them rabbit holes.
Yeah. This is one of my favourite stories. This is one of my favourite stories. It's incredibly relevant. I grew up in the Shoalhaven. So I grew up in a small village called Camberwarra, and I'd look out of our kitchen window every day, and I would see a place called Coolangatta Mountain. So we had Camberwarra Mountain to the left and Coolangatta Mountain. It's this little pimple out on the floodplains out near Berry, Shoalhaven Heads. That was settled in the early 1820s by a Scottish trader. He was not a convict, and Alexander Graham Berry. He came out and he was into different things, and he got an enormous land grant, basically the Shoalhaven River to Kiama to Kangaroo Valley. That was his. So he had some convicts. If you know the area much, that's a fucking big patch of dirt.
Yeah,
there was. Oh, beautiful, it's gorgeous. Beautiful. Very, very privileged to have grown up there. It was just bloody awesome. It was close.
It would have been covered in valuable timber. It would have been such a gift of
cedar. Yeah. Millions and millions of they call it super feet, board feet of cedar.
Yes.
They're turpentine. You know, they use turpentine trees. They just put the whole fucking tree straight in the ocean and build a wharf. And 180 years later, they haven't rotted because the turpentine oil is quite toxic to the marine organisms. So the borers and the worms can't get in further than about an inch of the log. So you pull the logs out 180 years old, you cut the outside inch or 2 inches off the log, beautiful turpentine hardwood timber, right? So turpentine, cedar, heaps of stuff. Right? So this guy starts settling the area, started planting wheat, started making paddocks, started put up houses. And in around about 1835 or something, might have been 1840, I'm a bit rusty, on the other side of the Shoalhaven River, the Shoalhaven Municipal Council was created. And they started saying, oh, put a road over there. He's like, fuck off. It's my paddock. I'm not putting a road there. Nah, we're the council. We want you to put a road over there. And he'd say to him, that's a swamp. Why would you want me to put a road in a swamp? Well, that's why we put it on the map. We want the road. So they then said, oh, we want that space over there to put a village in. We want to put a village there. And he's like, that's my wheat paddock. Fuck off. No, we're the council. We want you to put a village on that paddock. So he took them to court and he lost. So he took them to the next court, district court. He lost. Took them to the Supreme Court. He lost. Took them to the Court of Appeal. He lost. Took them to the High Court. He lost. We're like 15 years into this shit by now. He's a member of the fucking Parliament of New South Wales. He had the shits. He got elected to Parliament. He was a bloody pest. So I'm in great footsteps. He goes to the Privy Council in England, basically petitioning that municipal councils in New South Wales were unlawful. And back then, 1850, remember, New South Wales was fucking New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Queensland, and all of New South Wales. It was a massive place, right? It was half of Australia, PNG and New Zealand. That's your sort of broader context. So he's in the Privy Council in England and he won. He was right. And municipal councils across the whole of New South Wales were disbanded as they were found to be unlawful. And you read some of the writing of the time and it says, I really kick, I don't remember it exactly because it's a brilliant line, but basically it says something like the municipal councils were comprised of the worst ne'er-do-wells and spivs you could ever hope to not meet.
And nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing
Oh.
changed. There's nothing new
So
under the sun.
councils were disbanded, and the Parliament had to draft new legislation to create them again. And so the problem with the argument of local governments not recognised in the Australian Constitution, that's correct. It's not. But when we federated as a country, we brought all of our state constitutions, with the exception of Western Australia, together. We chucked them all in the hat and said, yep, we're all going to play the same game. And to the extent that there's a conflict, we'll defer to the federal legislation, such as it has powers of trade and the tax, etc. Local government was in the New South Wales Constitution prior to federation, so it survived and it carries through. And this is a fun fact for the kids at home. What is, and you guys can have a go at this, what is the title of New South Wales Constitution?
No,
What do
no
we call
idea.
it? It's called the Constitution. It's not the Constitution of New South Wales or the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. The New South Wales Constitution is simply the Constitution.
Yeah, right. Fuck.
So let me tell you, I'll come back. We'll go down a rabbit hole because I don't think New South Wales is subject to that Constitution, because it says this act shall be known as the Constitution, and then it says New South Wales is defined by place here, thereby in a straight line to there, this road there, this river, blah 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 blah. And you're like, okay, nowhere that I read does it say this Constitution applies to the land within that boundary. Doesn't
Yeah,
say
right.
that bit.
We'll have to have a look at that. That'll be a deep dive for another session. This is probably the longest one we've done, to be fair. Andrew, I'm not going to cut you off and send you home to bed or anything by any stretch of the imagination.
But I'm going to go and have dinner.
I do thank you for joining us. Absolutely, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
I think Temora Shire Council are feeling like they got off light tonight, but they might not like any follow through, I'm suspecting. Mate, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your advocacy and your efforts. It's very much appreciated, not by everybody, of course, but by some of us. Obviously, you're welcome to join us here at the Spin Doctors anytime you like, of course.
Mate, happy.
Mate, and look, and we've had a wonderful audience tonight, so thank everybody for listening and tuning in. I'll say it again, if you're supportive of these things, that's where you need to be sharing these programs. You need to be clicking the like button. You need to be adding us all as friends or following our little pages, all those sort of things. Andrew, what pages do you kind of have that people can follow? I know you've had about 20 banned over the years. I've had a couple.
Everything's in my name. As much as possible, I've tried to keep it simple. So it's always just Andrew Thaler. So there's one with a picture of a cup with Andrew. That's my main one at the moment. There's my old solar farm page. I put my name on it because everything kept getting banned. I'm on Twitter at Andrew_Thaler on Twitter, maybe. Instagram, I always forget that it exists, so I never use it. But you just Google search. And be prepared to be entertained by the news headlines when you stick my name in and do a Google search. But I'm a lovable ruffian. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Very, very lovable for sure. And of course, anybody who's interested in following Councillor Irvine, you have Anthony Irvine Stand Up for Temora page. You have my Dean McRae Spirit of Self-Determination page. And we also have the Spin Doctors page that's about to be rebranded from the former Ride Along radio show page. So they're all the things that are happening. If you sort of want to throw a bit of support, that's the way to do it. I've certainly never asked anybody for any money. I don't think either of these fellas have, but we do ask that you like, share, throw the message around, and support in that way, shape, and form. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in tonight. It has been a long one. We're usually an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah, but it's been good, and we certainly have. We've only just scratched the surface. I reckon we'll be back together again very shortly.
I have absolutely no doubt at all. And all the thank you, keep the bastards honest. We're doing our very best, but we can't do it without you guys. We're absolutely hamstrung if we don't have the support. So everybody, have a great night. Next Thursday night.
One last shout out to the Monero Zone, Chris Chan. That's what we're doing a lot of work through here. And why I say that is that's upended the standard media coverage. He writes songs. about our council and councillors and our council meetings. And if you ever want to convey a complex topic, the best way to explain shit to people sometimes is in a meme or a song or a ditty. It is incredibly powerful, and that goes back to what we're here for. But check out the Monero Zone with what Chris Chan's doing. That's going to be
ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly it. Check out the Monero Zone. Check out Andrew Thaler. Check out Councillor Irvine. Tune in next week for the Spin Doctors. We'll no doubt have another great guest the way it's all going. And now that we're going into this federal election time, it's been called. So we might even do a full panel show in a couple of weeks. That could be interesting. We'll get a whole heap of interesting characters on, and we'll lay the law down and explore some of the topics. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Councillor, you want
thanks, Andrew. It's been great. Good job.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great night, guys.
See you.
No worries. Cheers.